One of the most beautiful things about Couchbase is its simplicity alongside its scalability. So we're going to work through these basics of getting data in and out of Couchbase quickly in a single lesson so we can move on to more involved topics. So first, we assume you already know Express, but in case you're new to it, let's do just a one-slide review. So it's our HTTP route handler for Node.js. You can get everything you need around it out at expressjs.com. But the basics are that it enables you to support any HTTP verb and URL requested from your domain. So you'd require the Express module, and then the usual convention is to call and assign it to a local app variable, and then off the app variable you'll hang your various verbs, get, post, put, delete, and so on. It supports the rest as well. The first parameter, as you see, is the route itself. So on a get you would, for example, have a customer's route, and notice that it accepts route parameters. And then you place your callback with the request and response. Those expose those objects to you, and you can get all your request parameters through request.params, as you see here. The JSON post body can be parsed into a request.body object by the JSON parser module. Here we show applying JSON parser as middleware to the entire app through the app.use statement. As we'll see in slides ahead, you could also assign that inline for a particular route. And then you could also, for example, use a module like Node.UID to create unique document IDs for each document. We'll work with that a little bit in the exercise ahead as well. Quick review on opening a bucket from your cluster. So the cluster reference is created through the cluster method on the Couchbase module, noting that it could be one or several URLs. All Couchbase nodes are identical. And the bucket reference itself is created with the openBucket method, as we saw in the prior lesson. The bucket name and password, if there is one set, are used when opening the bucket, and then the bucket reference itself can be used throughout your routes, as you see here. So how do you insert new documents? So in a post route, you might choose to use the insert operation. So you send in the JSON body and parse it. Here we're showing JSON parser being used inline within the route as middleware. And it's being parsed through the .body property of the request object that gets added by JSON parser, assigned locally as a doc. And then a doc ID, and the doc would be passed to the insert method. The doc ID itself could be generated in whatever fashion is appropriate for your app, but you are assigning the new document ID here. Here we're speculating that you might want to assign a UUID with a type prefix of customer : or something else. There's a great deal more on the art and craft of creating your document IDs in our data modeling in JSON course, here free online. Go take a look at that. And then the result, once you insert the new document with its ID, is a result object that has the new check and set value, the new CAS value for this document. If the document ID that you're attempting to insert already exists, you're going to get an error. So there's also an upsert operation available in Couchbase. Now, again, here we see the JSON being sent in and parsed. The upsert operation, however, is different from the insert in that it receives the document and the new ID, and it creates the document if it does not exist with that ID, or updates if it does. The result is an updated CAS value, but there's not going to be an error if the document ID already exists. See, it's either an insert or an update, hence the name upsert. So how do you replace existing documents? Normally this would be mapped to a put route in a REST API. So again, you send in the JSON, and in this case, you do want to have the ID of the specific document that you're trying to replace, that you're trying to update or put, whichever way you like to think of that. And so we get the ID off of the parameter through request.params. We get the body from request.body and send it to a replace operation. But in this case, we're taking an existing document ID. And as before, we get a result object back with the new check and set value. And if the document ID in this case does not already exist. If you try to replace something but it's not there yet, in that case you'll get an error. So how do we go about getting rid of the documents we don't want? Well, presumably you would do this on a delete route, and you would call the delete method on the bucket. So again, you need the ID of the document to delete. Presumably you would pull this in from a parameter on the request, and then you pass that ID to the delete method on the bucket. As with the previous operation, an error is returned if this document ID does not already exist. You can't delete something if it's not there. In the lab, we're going to walk you through all of this to give you hands-on practice working with these routes, parsing out the values, and working with each of the methods that we've looked at. We're doing this all in one single, slightly lengthy exercise so that you can get these basics under your belt quickly and then move on. When you're done with that, come on back. Next up, we're going to take a look at how to execute nickel queries through the Couchbase Node.js SDK.